Oh,
He's
okay.
first.
But he's not walking. They're not walking in.
Not right now.
Not yet.
Oh, okay, they're not walking.
Good evening and welcome to the February 19th, 2020 Ashland Select Board meeting. This meeting is being televised live and being recorded by the good folks at WACA-TV. Is there anyone in this room recording this evening?
Just a few.
Thank you. Our agenda tonight, we've got some presentations at the very beginning. We have we're going to adjust our agenda slightly later on. We normally always have an update on the Eversource project. We're going to bring that up a little bit earlier in the meeting agenda, and also include citizen participation at that point in time. We always start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Can I ask the two young ladies in the front to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies. Our town manager, Michael Herbert, is on vacation this week, so we're in the very capable hands of our assistant town manager, Jen Ball. So tonight we're starting out with a presentation from RoboKids. So if you would come up and introduce your program and introduce yourselves as well.
Hi, I'm Siri. And I'm Sandy. And we're part of a LEGO robotics competition called FLL. And we're here on behalf of our team, WACA-TV.
So FLL is a three-part competition consisting of a robotics part, a research part, and core values part. So for this year's research part, the topic was City Shaper, or our communities. Our community being Ashland, one day we sat down and started brainstorming what we could do for our research problem. And we realized that we needed help from Mr. Herbert, and we reached out to him, and together we came up with our problem of the green safety building.
So the problem is that the Ashland Public Safety Building is scattered with many hazards, and it is old, and some problems include poor design, multiple energy inefficiencies, no room to host training, and there isn't enough space for automobiles and equipment. Passing trains delay emergency response, and there are separate dispatch centers. A new safety building is being planned. We are proposing to add energy efficient solutions to some indoor and outdoor problems in the safe public building. The innovations we'd like to add are a second wall for natural CO2 removal, air purification, a green roof for multiple advantages, piezoelectric hallways for providing an energy efficient way to produce light, and an algae farm. But you might be wondering, what are green roofs? According to the American Association of Landscape Architects, a green roof is a lightweight living system of soil, compost, and plants. Some of the benefits include that it filters pollutants, absorbs storm water, improves insulation, reduces runoff, improves water quality, and conserves energy. There are two types of vegetative roofs, extensive and intensive. We're planning our innovation is an extensive roof. But an intensive roof is almost the same exact thing, but with deeper soil. And some of the extensive vegetative roof features is that it helps with drainage and plant nourishment and support and many other things. So the layers of a green roof is that it starts on top of the roof deck, and then the waterproofing layer goes on top of the roof deck so that the water doesn't seep into the building. And then on top of it goes a roof area protection mat and a drainage layer to drain the water, and a filter sheet and growing substrate, which is basically 2 to 3 inches of soil and vegetation, which should be suitable for our climate. But we have to consider a few things as well, like safety, because like stuff like fences, because it's important for things not to fall off, and like sustainable weight load for your roof, like considering wet soil and snow, the maintenance because in dry months daily watering could be needed, and the plants that are sustainable to our climate. But most importantly, the cost. The EPA estimates the cost of installing green roof for $10 per square foot, and the annual maintenance costs about 75 cents to $1.50 per square foot.
The second idea we are proposing to add to our safety building is a living wall or succulent wall. Benefits of a succulent wall include their natural air purification abilities. They remove volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, from the air, and they emit water vapor, which acts as a pumping action that pulls the contaminants in the air down to its roots. They also improve the humidity of the building. As you may know, plants release water, and released water can then help with sore throat, common cold, and dry, itchy skin, and more. They also add fresh oxygen because, unlike most plants, succulents produce oxygen at night rather than carbon dioxide, and this is a huge health benefit. And most of all, they're a beautiful thing to look at every day. Why traditional air purifiers aren't as good as these air filters? Traditional air filters, although they can filter the air, they cannot remove carbon dioxide from the air. Usual indoor carbon levels are between 700 and 1200 parts per million, which is way over what they should be, and results in indoor air pollution, headaches, drowsiness, and more health issues. So we would like to add algae to our succulent wall to suck in the carbon dioxide levels from inside the building. Our third proposal is to add an algae farm on the side of the building. Ashland has a net zero initiative by 2040 to remove all greenhouse gas emissions from within the town's institutions, utilities, and more. So we would like to add these algae bioreactors to the side of the building to constantly be sucking in the carbon emissions in the air, helping work towards our goal. Global greenhouse gas emissions could be reduced by using algae to convert the carbon dioxide in the air into carbon fiber, which can then even power planes. This system was originally invented by architect Grifa and is known to grow and harvest microalgae to fight climate change. How it works is it takes in the carbon dioxide from the air while it's producing and replacing that carbon dioxide with more oxygen. Microalgae is 150 to 200 times more efficient than a tree when it comes to reducing the oxygen levels in the air outside. Urban facades and roofs are just billions of wasted square meters that could become easily photosynthetic surfaces as a response to climate warming. Grifa's system is an algae filtered structure in which these individual capsules hold algae which grows in the water that is also stored in the individual capsules and is constantly removing a few days or weeks. The world's first algae power exists in Germany, and this zero-carbon apartment sports this very algae farm on the side of its building. And I quote Grifa, quote, "No fossil fuel," quote. Our fourth and final proposal to add to this building is the piezoelectric hallway. What is piezoelectricity, you may ask? Piezoelectricity is the ability to produce energy when being pushed or pressed on. The benefits include it is a clean energy source, requires low maintenance, is small in size, it has a good frequency response, and the piezoelectric transducer is available in desired shape. So how it works is piezoelectricity is an alternating current. So when you press on these piezo plates, which are made of piezo elements, the alternating currents travel through these wires and end up at this rectifying bridge made of these diodes, as shown here. When it leaves the rectifying bridge, it gets stored in the battery, and it leaves as a direct current, which can then light a bulb. If we were to tap it enough times, then this light bulb would light up when we click this. As always, there's things to consider in making a piezoelectric hallway. We have to consider the needed power, like the types of lights, or if we would like to use sensors, like for example, LED lights use less power. And we'd also have to consider the material of the tiles, like what kind of crystal, quartz, titanium, PZT, lead are usual in piezo plates, and the number of steps needed to produce X amount of energy. The storage, for our example, we are using a battery to store the direct current energy, and the feasibility of it all, like cost and maintenance.
But none of this would have been possible without help from our town manager, Michael Herbert, and building architect Annie Dunlap. Town manager Mr. Herbert helped us think of this problem and encouraged us throughout our entire journey. And building architect Amy Dunlap did the exact same thing, but also helped us think of the logistics of what could actually work and how this building is planning on looking like. And we'd like to thank you guys for giving us a chance to present.
Thank you very much. So can I ask you, what grade levels are you?
We're both in seventh.
Seventh grade. So it's terrific. Great testimony to the schools, to your parents as well, and to the community. So thank you very much.
Congratulations and thanks for sharing.
Good job. So this is one of the byproducts of our net zero initiative, getting all folks thinking all different ideas how we can combat climate change. So that's great.
That's terrific.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our presentation with the retirement of Ashland's canine dog. And after that, we will take a short break so that the cameras can break down. So we're all set for Dax.
Here he is.
Stand right over there. Thank you. Thank you. Well, good evening to all of you. This is a bittersweet moment tonight. Before I even came to the Ashland Police Department, years ago in law enforcement, I heard rumors of this dog named Dax that was the top canine in the state, and he was a member of the Ashland Police Department. And then I had the honor and the privilege to come here and serve as chief. And Dax is our police dog, and he is a legend. But tonight, like all of us, actually like I did once, Dax will be retiring. He's still a healthy dog, and he's still in good shape, and he's a faithful companion. But the rigors of police canine work dictate that we must put another dog into frontline service, Canine Ajax. So standing in front of you is Dax's handler, Sergeant Chris Alberini, an Ashland native. And Chris is, without question, probably one of the most outstanding canine officers in the state. Occasionally he'll tell me that, but I hear that more from other I hear that from other canine officers across the state. I hear that from canine police instructors across the state. So Ashland has been blessed with an extraordinary police dog. This dog has more papers than I do, but I just want to highlight some of the accomplishments that Dax has had in his career here with Sergeant Alberini, starting in 2009. Dax was born in Slovakia, and he was imported to the United States specifically for training as a police dog. He's been trained in patrol and drug enforcement, so he has dual training. Not all police dogs have that. He has over 50 people finds. In other words, searching for missing persons or criminals. He's found over 50 in his career. He has well over 100 live street narcotics fines and arrests to his credit. He has served on the search and the SWAT teams for the marathon bombing. He was in there assisting Boston and state police for that. He was awarded the Hanna Award for Bravery, which is the highest award any law enforcement officer in Massachusetts can achieve. This dog holds that award. And he did that for saving the lives of one or possibly more Ashland police officers. So he earned that award. He also has the National Hero Dog Award, which is a national award, national recognition. He was flown out to California. They even did a Hollywood documentary on this dog. I don't think anyone in the room can say that they have one of those on themselves. So, and on top of that, every day he went out on patrol with Sergeant Alberini and did his job protecting the streets of Ashland. So tonight, Dax is earning his award. I'm before you tonight to ask that you can help us uphold a tradition in police work. In the canine police field, it's a tradition that a police dog retires at a higher grade. So Dax is a patrol dog, and we would ask the Board of Selectmen if they would appoint him a patrol sergeant dog tonight.
Very good. So I will entertain a motion to appoint Dax as a sergeant of the Ashland Police Department.
I move that we award Dax, Patrol Sergeant Dax, on his retirement for the Ashland Police Department.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And congratulations, Dax. And-
Congratulations, Dax.
And to commemorate that, I happen to have a badge for Dax. He's one of us, and as you can see, there's a sea of blue surrounding you. I believe every Ashland police officer is here, along with all the support staff. And this is a badge that I'm going to present to Sergeant Albrini, because I'm not going to pin it on. Good job.
So we have, the Select Board also has a proclamation for Dax before we turn the mic over to Sergeant Alberini.
Thank you, Chief. As a member of the Select Board and a fellow police officer who retired 6 years ago, I had the opportunity and pleasure to work with Sergeant Alberini. At the time, he was working with me on the 3 to 11 shift, and when I retired, he took my place. So I have a proclamation here that I would like to read and present to Dax and to his handler, Chief. Sure. Sorry, you can leave now. Well, we're making promotions. I was, well, you know. Whereas Dax was purchased by the Ashland Police Department Union and donated to the town in 2009, and whereas Dax has faithfully served the Ashland Police Department for more than 10 years, also serving on SWAT and Metrolec teams, and whereas Sergeant Chris Alberini steadfastly served as the handler for Dax throughout his career, developing a special bond that exists only between a handler and a canine while serving the Ashland community and beyond. And where Dax was awarded the George Hanna L. Memorial Award in 2014 and the American Humane Society Hero Dog on 2015, and whereas Dax and Sergeant Alberini have supported multiple community events, often providing demonstrations and showing the abilities and skills that they have developed over the years of service with this town. And whereas Dax is now retiring from active service and will spend time with his family and friends and his replacement Ajax, is now therefore we, the Select Board of the Town of Ashland, do hereby proclaim that Thursday, February 20th, as Dax Day. We urge that all residents make it known their appreciation and devotion to the Town of Ashland. And Dax, thank you for everything that you've done for our community and for your handling and for those that you protect and serve. Thank you.
Chris, if you'd like to say a few words.
I'll watch.
And then I think also, when we take a break, Chris, if we could take a couple photos with the board.
I just want to say thank you to Chief Alfano and to the Board of Selectmen and to all the guys that I work with that are here and the K-9 guys that I train with. It's been my absolute pleasure and honor to be his handler, and I'm looking forward to working with Ajax, but I don't know how anyone's going to stand up to what he's done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Miles, we're going to take a 5-minute break while cameras get broken down, and if there's any interviewing that needs to be done, we can take a couple photos, and then we'll start right back up.
Sounds good to me. Thank you. Thank you.
Back to the February 19th, 2020 Ashland Select Board meeting. Next item on our agenda is a update on Honto Restaurant. We're going to have Chief Alfano come back in to provide a update along with the owner of Honto. Will be here as well. So Chief, if you want to come back up to the microphone, we're going to have an update from on Honto.
I think you need to set up a bunk here. As you know, per order of the board, we've been in regular contact with the ownership of the Honto restaurant to ensure that the quality of life in that neighborhood was good and that there were no issues or no concerns. I'm happy to report that since the sanctions were put in place by the Board of Selectmen, we have had 0 incidents, no calls for service there at all. No noise complaints, no parking problems, nothing. I've made repeated inspections of the restaurant with our lieutenants to check on the progress of some improvements to the acoustics of the building that we had discussed with the management and we'd actually suggested to the management. A number of the things that we did suggest they have done. I can outline some of them. The stage area, which was a hard flooring and echoed a lot of the noise, was carpeted, so that absorbs a lot of the sound. Some additional soundproofing was added behind the stage. They built partitions, which are almost complete, around the bar area and surrounding the lounge area. They're counter height partitions, plywood on one side, sheetrock soundboard on the other, and they will be carpeted. They weren't carpeted when I checked there today, but the management assures me they have the carpet and they'll be putting that on. They're also carpeting the sides of the walls, again, for acoustical insulation. Probably the biggest improvement that we suggested to them, and they have done it, the 2 double doors that exit directly off the stage area and the lounge to the parking lot. Through our testing, those 2 double doors were determined to be the primary cause of noise. Patrons were allowed to enter and exit through those doors. A lot of times people were going in and out, smoking out in the parking lot, etc. So we suggested to them, do not use those doors. Have everybody come through the main entrance. That would accomplish a couple of things. One, it would channelize all traffic by an easier ID access point where the staff could check IDs, liquor IDs and licenses much more easily. They did do that. There's signage posted on the outside of those double doors directing people around to the main entrance. They have signage and actually some traffic cones in front of the doors, the double doors on the inside. The fire chief did recommend to them, and I concur, that they install panic crash emergency exit hardware on those double doors. I did not see that installed yet. However, they said they are doing that, and they did work with a locksmith the last time I spoke with them. What that would do is it would turn those double doors into an emergency exit. So very happily, I can report, they have been working on what we asked them to do. It's not all completed yet, but a good proportion of it is. And they actually did install some acoustic flooring in the bar area, a much softer material, very cushiony underfoot. It was hard tile there before. So that's what I have to report. We've had no issues.
Good. So I believe the owner is in the room. If he wants to address the board at all, please come up, Ray. One question I have, Chief, is
Yes.
all of the required areas that should be secured now secured?
Yes. Yeah, we didn't notice any issue with that.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah.
Thanks for coming in, Ray.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah.
So we just, again, wanted to have an update with the chief has provided one, and it sounds like you're working diligently with the chief to.
Oh yeah. But still, some part of it I still work on it, cause honestly, tell the truth, cause like financially we're hurting, and then I'm just doing like by myself, and then ask friends to help me out. So that's why it's a little slow, and then also some material I have to wait, so that's why it's been a little slow, but I'm working on it.
Good. Well, we appreciate that, and certainly we want you to be successful, and And hopefully
you.
you'll, as time goes on, your business will improve. And so thank you for coming tonight. And does the board have any comments?
Yeah, this only things I'm trying to, just ask for like our entertainment license, the time, which is like, cause my plan is we're not going to have I mean, we do have a full band, but just like maybe like 1 or twice a month, and then we'll choose
Sure.
like something like low key band, but the time what we're getting is like I mean is to us it seems like doesn't make no any sense because 10:30 and what have they fully stopped even though like acoustic like music anything because we that's really I mean if the board can consider to extend the time, but doesn't mean we're going to if allowed. For example, if we put a midnight, doesn't mean we're going to play at midnight, because I got caught by a couple minutes. Got like this the first time I got caught by over a couple minutes. So that I mean just if the board can
Sure.
consider to yeah.
Okay, and I think, as I recall, we had rolled back your hours with the intent to review this after 3 months.
Okay.
And not sure if the 3 months has expired at this point, but we can check on that. And at this point, I mean, based on the chief's report, I mean, the assumption was no situations, and then we would review it, and with the potential of putting it back to the original hours. So I think at this point maybe we should check to see when that 3-month period, if it's expired yet.
It was December 4th is when you had the hearing, so it would be March 4th.
So March. So I think what we can do, Ray, is maybe put it on our agenda for our first meeting in March.
Yep.
And discuss it at that point.
All right.
Is that
Thank you.
reasonable?
Yeah.
Good.
Thank
Okay.
you, board.
So I'm going to open it up to the board for any comments or questions at this point. Joe?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ray, I
Yeah.
know that you said you yourself and a few of your friends are working on getting the requirements that we asked for the soundproofing to get done, and I understand it's a financial matter, and I get that, and I can appreciate that. Will it be possible to have those done before we do the review on the entertainment license? Because I fear that if those are not in good working condition, good working order, that sound will dissipate out and we'll have that same issue again, and we'll start getting complaints where now you haven't had that, so things have been kind of quiet.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just wondering whether the soundproofing will be completed by March 4th, and if not,
March 4th.
which is in, 2-3 weeks? 2 weeks?
Honestly, so I will do my best, but
Okay.
I don't think I can fully finish up. But I'm trying.
Okay,
I'm
I'm trying to alleviate any possibilities of complaints coming because the music is being heard by the neighbors where they haven't had that in a while.
Oh, well, even though we have a music, we don't, like I just said it, so we're going to choose like soft rock, even though we have a band, we have soft rock, and acoustic, I mean, they don't have that, they don't not allow anyway, and then also we are not allow people using that door, even though right now, every day pretty much, customer get used to right now, because we put a big sign inside, outside, and they go use the other door as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I would do the best I can. I will try to finish
Okay.
up right before.
Just trying to
the
alleviate any
Yeah.
potential future complaints that may come from,
Yeah.
the work not being finished. Not that it won't be finished, but prior to it being completed.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I also just noticed the water because we've been fixing a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So fix the bar size, updating.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially like the management, we
Yeah.
change everything up.
And the materials that you're using, I'm sure, passing the fire code?
I believe so, because so when I bought that stuff, the store told me this improved.
Yeah. I just don't want to see a lot of that stuff being hung up on the walls and stuff if it's not fire coded properly, and then have something happen, and then, God
Yeah.
forbid, we have another
I get it, yeah.
incident like Rhode Island.
Yeah.
You don't want that happening.
All right, so I'll make sure.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yolanda?
So just to follow up, the chief mentioned that you're gonna be putting a special bar on those double doors.
Yeah.
Will they be alarmed as well, so that should someone decide to go out that way, it would go off, so that you would hear people go out that way?
You mean inside the double door?
So on the inside of the double doors, if someone were to go out that way, will there be an alarm so that you can know, I mean, because if
I-
they're not alarmed unless someone's paying attention, I would think that even though there's signs, someone could potentially go out.
Okay, well, thanks for remind. But what I'm thinking, like, to put like a double door, like, I never, thinking this, put an alarm, but we can put an alarm on it.
I think that would help you.
Yeah.
That way, people aren't, because it can get full in there.
Yeah,
And if you're not watching the door, at least if there's an alarm, then if it were open, you could be aware of it.
so do you mean the outside the door, double door, not inside double door?
So the
right?
double doors that take you into the bar area currently, right? There's just one set of double doors there.
Oh, we just built not a double door.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so that's why I was, I'm a little confused, I'm so sorry. So is the one from outside, the double door you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
think if you have double doors there now, that's great, but I would think you want the ones that are going outside to be
Okay.
alarmed so that you're
Oh,
aware
okay,
if
got
people
it,
try to
yeah.
use them.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right, yeah, I'm
That's it.
going to
But
work on.
it's nice to hear that you're doing these improvements.
Thank you for board, allow me to,
Brandy?
Just a quick question. So when you were here last time, we were talking about the management, and there
Yeah.
were a couple issues. Are you in the restaurant every day? Are you responsible for the day-to-day management, or have you hired someone to?
These were good questions. I'm there, I would say like 6 days and a half. And also we have, I hired one of a guy, the bar manager, to help me out too, just in case I'm not there. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, I just say thanks, Ray. It's
Yeah.
good to hear that you're following up, and the chief's report's very important to us, so that's great, good news.
Welcome, thank you
Just to
for
follow
giving
up
me
then, if you
chances.
have another person there, is their name as a manager as well? It it only has to be one manager? Okay. You can only have one manager, okay.
Okay.
All right, I think that's all of our questions, so thank you for coming.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for
We'll-
having me
We'll discuss the entertainment license at our next meeting.
next week,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice week.
Right. Chief, thanks for the report.
Yes, Chief.
Before you leave, one more item of business related to the police department, and I'm gonna pull one of the items from our consent agenda, which is the accepting of a police donation in the amount of $10,000 from Middlesex Savings Bank to be used for equipment and training. So if you would like to speak to that, first of all, I'd like to thank Middlesex Bank certainly for their generosity. This is part of a program, I believe, that they've instituted for first responders in particular.
Yes.
And I know they've been very generous with other community components as well. So if you want to speak to the grant and what you intend to do with it.
Certainly. We were very pleased. They reached out to us on the grant, and they said that they were going to donate the funding towards public safety, both police and fire in a number of different communities. The grant amount is $10,000, which is a substantial amount. It needs to be used for equipment and training for the police department. We certainly have a use for that. As you know, one of our initiatives is to improve community policing as far as getting the officers out there, both on pedal bicycles and motorcycles. The motorcycles are key to our traffic enforcement unit, so we'll be using some of that funding for training and equipment for the motorcycles. We'll also be using that for the bike patrol. And through a number of incidents here in town that we've experienced, we found that to strengthen our search and rescue capabilities, we're looking at a police-specific drone, and we'll be training a number of our officers to fly that. They're very good at locating lost people. That's what we would use it for, primarily search and rescue. They're equipped with a night vision device and heat sensing devices. We've used one very successfully with the Metrolec organization that we belong to in some operations with them. But this one is specifically geared towards search and rescue. Unfortunately, we had a tragic drowning in town a number of months ago, and we honestly believe that had we had a piece of equipment like this available to us, we would have been able to find that person sooner. So we're strengthening our search and rescue capabilities. So between our K9, which is our primary search and rescue tool, and now the drone, and then our partners over at the fire department with their boats and their equipment, we're very confident that in cases that we have a patient with Alzheimer's, a lost child, looking for a criminal suspect that may be in the woods, this could be a very useful tool for us. So we will be using part of that funding towards that as well. And there's quite a bit of interest among the officers to actually fly those.
Very good. Well, thank you for the updates, and thank you for the presentation, the retirement of Dax. And,
Yes, it's quite an evening.
So it was great. Yeah, it was very good stuff. So thank you, and
You're welcome.
We'll see you shortly, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Take care. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
So because you pulled it, do we need to do a motion to accept it separately?
Yeah, we'll get to that when
Okay,
we get to
sorry.
it, all right?
Okay, sorry.
Our next item on the agenda, we're going to adjust our agenda slightly, and we're going to move to an Eversource update. And so two things. There's not a whole lot to update on. I think the last meeting we did mention that that Eversource had filed an appeal of the Concom's denial with the Department of Environmental Protection, so that's at the very beginning stages at this point. We did report at our last meeting that we were entertaining a contract for a consultant, and Rob, if you have any update on that?
Yeah, we just had a few conversations with Dr. Stanton. She's ready to go. We weren't able to meet with her and finalize her engagement, but hopefully that'll happen next week. Both she and Michael are out on school vacation week, so they're on vacation. So hopefully we'll get that in place next week, and she's ready to go. I think we talked about 4 to 6 weeks for the report, which seems to be a reasonable kind of timeline. So.
Okay, very good. And then the last thing in terms of an update is, again, recapping of our last meeting with the relative to the abutters of the pipeline and the legal outlets that might be available. The town subsequently sent out a communication to abutters. I'm assuming that most abutters, I know there's one gentleman in the room tonight that did not receive one. He has one now, but that was sent out, let's say, maybe a week and a couple days last week. So at this point, that's all the information we have in terms of anything new. I will entertain citizen participation at this point. We do have, before we start with anybody here to discuss Eversource, we have a member of the medical corps here that would like to speak to the board and to the community. So Mike, if you can come up, introduce yourself, and then I'll open the microphone up to citizen participation. Thank you.
Sure. Oh, thanks, Mike. You can look at that.
Good evening. So first of all, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mike Gernick. I've been chair of Ashland's Medical Reserve Corps, working with Mark Oram in public health since 2006, when the actual initiation of Medical Reserve Corps nationwide got underway. Medical Reserve Corps, as the term indicates, is a medical mission. And the purpose of the mission overall is to supplement the existing healthcare workforce during times of extraordinary demand. We know from the news across the world right now about the coronavirus. We have not had serious impact in this country, but you can see where something started in Asia, and within days, it was across the world. So in a case of any type of medical surge like that, or a need to have volunteers in place, Ashland is part of a 31-town community, or region, let's say, of MRC volunteers. The region goes pretty much from Wilmington all the way down to Rentham. So it's kind of that crescent around metropolitan Boston. We now have in place, rather than one full region, we have a North District region and a South District region. Make it a little bit administratively palatable. So I work with a coordinator in the South District region. There's another person in North District, and then there's an overall regional coordinator that kind of is liaison to the state level as well as to Washington. I'm called chair just from the standpoint that I'm a chair of the original executive committee, which got the MRC underway here in town. Really what I am is a liaison between the volunteers here and both national and state level directors of the MRC program. The MRC program at the national level is housed in an office called the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response. And that's a mouthful of letters, but what it really is the main policy and preparedness group for all of healthcare in the country. And along with that, MRC also works closely with the Office of the Surgeon General. So we have a national presence here in Ashland. We, in 2009, vaccinated about 1,400 kids and at-risk adults for the H1N1 flu vaccine. And that was done in 2 clinics, one done at the middle school and then subsequently later on at the high school. So that's the sort of thing that would overwhelm local resources if it had to be done on a town-wide basis. It was done selectively by appointment, so that worked out fairly well. But you can see what would happen if you had an instance where we couldn't just rely on our school nursing staff and our paramedics to give out a huge number of vaccines. So this is where this volunteer group would come in. And it's been very successful. Along with that particular project at the time, we routinely support the half marathon with a medical tent at the finish line. We're at Ashland Day with the point of trying to gain more recruits, more volunteers. And I don't have the applications with me, but they can be had in public health, certainly if anybody wanted to start that process. And we're always welcoming more and more volunteers, no doubt about that. And the criteria to say, too, about a volunteer is, despite the fact it's a medical mission, for every one medical person, there's probably a need for like 3 other people to volunteer who are non-medical. Administrative people, people who can take care of traffic flow, both human and vehicle traffic, that sort of thing, if we're going to have a large clinic of some sort. So that's essentially what the program is. The good thing from the local level is you're never going to see an MRC line item in the town budget. This is completely federal and nationally supported, and grant supported as well. Most of the work is done out of Washington, and that's where a lot of the money source actually is. So, thoughts? I'll entertain questions, however you want to continue.
So you're looking for volunteers? Is that
All the time,
All
sure.
the time?
Yep, all the time,
Okay,
sure.
So that's an ongoing
Yep.
need for the Corps.
Yeah, right now in the town, we probably have about 30 to 40 volunteers active. But of course, there's a process to go through, and some people have moved away. Some people are not in the role that they had been before.
Okay.
So that has changed for them as well.
Yeah.
But definitely.
So there's training that's
Yes.
required? And
Well, the only requirement as far as training goes, we advocate that people should be trained in first aid, CPR, those basics. But the absolute requirement, which is a regional and national one, is something called Incident Command System version 100. It's an online course. The reason that that's required is that essentially sets up the whole organizational structure. So regardless of what the volunteer level is and how skilled they are, they're going to have an idea about how this whole system works. And the only reason that that is required is because nobody can be deployed to an incident unless they have that training background. So in other words, if we were to have a local event, that's one thing. But if we were to send some of our volunteers elsewhere, for instance, a couple months ago, Framingham had a flu clinic. Some of the volunteers from Ashland worked the flu clinic. So you can't appear in that role unless you're credentialed and qualified at that. But that's, other than that, that's the only really requirement.
Okay. And how does, if somebody's interested in participating, who do they contact? How do they contact?
We're housed in the, in public health, so I've always advocated directly to Mark Orm's office.
Okay.
That's
So
where
they can go
the
through
process
the
starts.
health department
Yep.
in town hall
Yep.
and communicate their interest that way? Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
This is something the Board of Health is working also to help streamline, get more volunteers to streamline the process,
Okay.
the application process.
Yeah, I've
So-
spoken with Diane extensively on that, and that is the case, because we want to kind of grow where we had been before. Because it's a flexible system, but people do drop out, so.
Good. Any questions for Mike or comments?
I've seen Mike and the medical corps at Farmers Market under the town tent.
Yeah,
That's right.
and at Ashland,
Yeah.
It's very active,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another presence we have, and the idea is promotion, so we do that pretty regularly.
Okay.
I think it's timely with a lot of the news around the coronavirus. There's definitely people that will either be interested or want to have more information. And
Oh,
if
sure,
there's something
absolutely.
that activates the group, if there's something similar to the clinic that you did, in 2009, it's good to.
Sure.
It's good to.
Good. And this, your literature, is it available in town hall?
There are some
We-
brochures downstairs
Yeah.
by the
Okay.
door, and they're always being developed from time to time,
Okay.
so I try and get new stuff out as much as I can. And right now, the website for Region 4A, which is the region that Ashland is housed in, has been redone, so that should have more access as well as
Sure.
more information on it.
Yeah, and maybe you can work with Susan to get some of this advertised on the town's
Yeah?
Facebook page, website, and so on.
Mhm.
With WACA too, I mean, put
Yeah.
that up there
Yeah.
on their
Yeah.
website and it's constantly do a loop
Yeah.
around.
Good.
Okay. Any other comments? Good.
Just
Mike,
thanks for your
thank you.
What you do, Mike, appreciate
Thank
it.
you all.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
appreciate it. All right, the microphone is open. If you'd come up and please line up. If not, we're going to be moving on fairly quickly. We've got other items on the agenda. Good evening.
Hi,
Hi.
Nancy Moscato, 73 Brayburn Lane. I just had two questions for you regarding Dr. Stanton. Can you describe for us a little about what you anticipate the scope of her role will be, of her project will be?
Sure.
And then secondly, more specifically, do you anticipate that she will be able to assist in some way with respect to the appeal that Eversource has filed with the DPU?
So in terms of my expectations of a report is, first thing is to review the application, which of course a lot of us have seen. It's hundreds and hundreds of pages of information. To review Eversource's analysis on the necessity for the pipeline, and also do an overview of the current energy market and issues with gas versus alternatives. See if, with an analysis of what's changed in the marketplace since Eversource did their application, all with a view to just reviewing the necessity for the pipeline and if that's the best alternative. So that's my main expectation from her. And then to serve as a potential expert witness should it be necessary. I don't think we know if we'll have that opportunity to use her in any particular situation, but by building up, my hope at least, and I think the other members, by building up this kind of strong technical analysis and background, that'll strengthen our case as we move along in this process.
Part of our request for a quote included the opportunities for Dr. Stanton to do testimony when those situations became available. We can't speculate when or how, but that's part of the expectation.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Nancy.
Good evening, Diane
Good
Ring,
evening.
Bay Colony Drive. So I was really surprised to hear that that Eversource has filed an appeal with the DEP, and it is just hard to keep track. I don't know how you do it. There's so many moving parts, but I don't remember hearing about DEP. Was this a surprise, or?
I don't know about a surprise. My understanding was they had various options to pursue, one of which was DEP, one of which was the siting board, and also going directly to, I think, Superior Court was a third option that they had. So, why they chose this particular route, I'm sure we're going to find out.
Right. So I don't know if you have a crystal ball and can actually predict this, but I wondered if there will be other arenas in which they will file an appeal, or is it just strictly?
One more time, Diane, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, well, you don't have a crystal ball, and I don't know if you know, but I'm wondering if anyone can anticipate whether Eversource would appeal in a different arena or, regulatory agency other than DEP?
Yeah, I don't know. My assumption is that they could do any number of those three things in maybe individually or, solely or together. I don't know if there's anything that limits them from pursuing, let's say, an appeal to the siting board, as an example.
Right.
Right?
So this is just unfolding, and we're just going to have to wait and see.
And I mean, the docket is, we all have access to the docket. You see the only thing that's listed is that their intent is to pursue an appeal with DEP at this point.
Okay, one other quick question,
Hold
if
on
I
one
may.
sec. I think Jen had a...
I think we'll have to watch this unfold. I think the difference is, I think what's driving some of the appeal is based on the clock in which they have an opportunity to appeal. And so I believe the appeal time period for our local bylaw is a little bit longer. So I think that still, time will tell if that's what they decide to appeal. So I think what may be, I'm guessing, obviously, but what may be driving it is the window of appeal it varies depending on the avenue, and so.
So DEP would be for the state bylaw?
The state bylaw, I believe, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And just one other quick question. Steve, you and I had talked about that earlier this week. Steve is very generous with his phone time when you have questions. So at the time when we spoke, I was wondering if there was a game plan if we lose the land court case, which of course, heaven forfend, I hope it doesn't happen, but what would the next step be on that?
If we were to, if it would be ruled, my understanding is that we could go to Superior Court. We would appeal it to Superior Court would be the next step for us, right? And I'm assuming that if we were successful in the land court, that Eversource would do the same thing, right? So, this is kind of a cascading or ever-growing, house of cards in a sense. But, I think, again, it's very difficult to speculate. It's very difficult to make commitments about certain actions at this point without having the ability to discuss with counsel and, not having all the information
and the crystal ball.
And a crystal ball, certainly. And, and at some point, in fact, it was part of our conversation the other day was, and it was alluded to at our last meeting, is, the money is, the amount of money that we're spending is growing. And, that's going to be at some point, it may not be a consideration now, but at some point in May. And, you agreed to that, certainly. You understand that.
Of course.
I don't think we're at that point yet, but, it's just, but you can see as these things kind of escalate.
Well, so I will do my usual thank you for keeping the fight going, and I hope you will continue, and I hope it ends soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Hi, I'm Barbara Schwab, 20 Indian Spring Road. Thank you again for everything that everybody is doing as far as this pipeline goes. When I got the letter, the most recent letter about the abutters, I kind of interpreted it that someone didn't think that we had a right to join or to jump on to the town's docket, even with our own attorneys. Did I misunderstand that?
Well, slightly, I think. It's not that you don't have a right. I think that's an option that you have through your own attorney, is to become, to join in on the town's land court case. Or you could pursue as in a butter of standing, meaning you've got a pipeline directly through your property, you could then pursue a similar case on your own.
But we still can hop on that one? Or you're not sure?
Well, I think you'd need to consult an attorney. I'm
Okay.
not going to speak to anything that's
Okay,
a legal nature. I can't do that.
Okay.
And I can't advise you to do one thing or another.
Okay.
I think the best thing, if you have a question, is really to discuss it with an attorney, and then your attorney could then communicate with the town's council.
Okay.
All
Good.
right?
Yeah.
And that's really the
The way it goes.
process.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And this will be the last citizens' participation for this evening. We are going to move on.
Chuck Lids, 150 Oregon Road. I just wanted to say that I want to be optimistic about this. It looks to me like the governor has said that we are going to be net zero by 2050. It's going to take 5 years to complete the pipeline, even if they start tomorrow. These things pay back over 40 years. There's not going to be anybody to pay it back. So I suspect the siting board is going to get around to saying you can't do this anymore. I could be wrong, but I just want you to think about the logic, the investment logic of this is no longer.
I think that's a good
sense.
analysis, and I think at some point the siting board, right now, as you know, they don't use climate change as a parameter.
This isn't
but that's
climate
changing,
change.
right? I mean, they're not obviously not oblivious to.
But you understand, I'm not even suggesting that this has anything to do with climate change. It has to do with
the economics of dead assets.
Right.
Yeah.
So, which is why I like the argument.
Good analysis.
Thank you.
All right, so this is our last.
Okay, I won't take long. I just want to clarify something that I think I've spoken to before, but it came up again tonight.
Sure.
And I'm Carl Hackinson from the Conservation Commission. The application for a notice of intent in Ashland, because Ashland has a local bylaw, contains an application under the state law and an application under the local law. The applicant has to be successful under both of them in order to proceed. The application was denied under both the state law and the local law. DEP's jurisdiction is solely on the state law. They have no jurisdiction over the local law. So if they're going to appeal the decision under the local law, it would have to be at the EFSB or at Superior Court.
Okay.
And Jen is right. It's a 10-day appeal period to DEP and a 60-day appeal period to Superior Court. And the process of evaluation is very different. DEP is what's called de novo review, and DEP kind of takes it from the Conservation Commission and says, thank you, but we'll take care of this now. The appeal of the local law at Superior Court is under the arbitrary and capricious standard, which is a regular appeals process where the court would review the record before the Conservation Commission, and in essence say, could a reasonable Conservation Commission, given this information, come up with this decision.
Okay.
So the process is different and the place is different. and the time for appeal
Okay.
is different.
So just to make sure that I was reasonably accurate, so in terms of the three avenues that they have, it's DEP, Siting Board, and Superior Court, and they could do multiple actions.
They could, and most likely will. EFSB, because they are a utility, well, Eversource, because they are a utility, has the option of going to EFSB. That's not an option that's available to a normal application before the Conservation
Good.
Commission.
Okay. Well,
So it almost sounds like they have to go to all three.
Well, they would have to go to
Because
at
of the
least
local-
two.
Because of
Go
the
to at least two.
local, right, so for the local, they either have to go Superior Court or EFSB.
Correct.
Okay.
And they have to be successful in
In both of
both venues.
Okay.
Okay, is that
Yeah,
clear?
that's great. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, so we're going to move on to so thank you for our comments tonight. Thank you for coming out. We're going to move to, Susan, can you put on the consent agenda? We can clean that up.
Not a bad idea.
That's okay, we're used to it.
This is more like it.
Yeah, there we go. Now we're feeling comfortable.
Is what?
The Valentine's Day that we discussed.
Oh.
It's on our
It's
list
an update.
when we go to select
Oh,
board
yes.
priority projects.
Yes, absolutely. I'll do that. Yeah.
But we don't have, there's not much of an update.
There's no real update right
There's
now.
not much of
but-
an update, yeah.
But nice to see you guys.
All right, so we have our consent agenda is listed on the screen. Do I have a motion to modify and/or accept?
Yep, I move that we pull out, because we talked about it, the exception of the police donation. And I move that we accept the police donation in the amount of $10,000 from Middlesex Savings Bank to be used for equipment and/or training.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and that carries 5-0. The consent agenda is accepted.
Nope, that was just A.
That's just
I move
A.
that we accept the, I move that we accept the consent agenda as modified.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Now you can move on.
All right,
All right.
now I'm moving on. And I'm going to move on to actually the deed restriction under old new business at 30 Raymond Way. I believe we have the resident here, so we can finish that. So Jen, if you want to walk
Sure.
us through that
Sure can.
process, please?
So this is a restriction that has come through the Conservation Commission. So really, it's cleaning up an older deed restriction from when the development was created. So I believe the order of conditions was filed with the Conservation Commission in 2001, and I think ultimately closed out around 2004. In the last year and a half, it sort of came to light that as part of the condition, order of condition, was to submit this conservation restriction on 30 Raymond Way that restricts it essentially to a one-house lot. And so when the subdivision, when that house was created, there was some concerns from abutters that it was a larger lot and that you could eventually subdivide it potentially and have several homes. And so this restriction was placed on it. This is really cleaning up something that should have occurred. And so the homeowners have been working through their council with Conservation Commission and Town Council on this restriction, and that way they'll actually be able to get their certification of compliance. And so it has been signed by the owners, it has been signed and reviewed by Conservation, it's been reviewed by Town Council, and the last stop is
Right.
here.
And you did provide us with
I did.
with plot plans
Yep.
and all the pertinent
Mhm.
information. So our job here tonight is to approve the conservation restriction and then to sign the document at the end of the evening. So any questions or comments on this?
No.
No? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the conservation restriction as presented for 30 Raymond Way.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And so that's approved. We'll sign that at the end of the evening. You're good to go. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that is letter E. All right, moving on, update on the Ashland Post Office. There is, Susan posted a update this afternoon on Facebook. For those that aren't on Facebook and spend their, on the website, sorry. So for those that spend their every other Wednesday night watching the select board meetings, the post office assessment is completed. Minor restoration will be will be required before major work begins. The major reconstruction is scheduled to begin in May, and the timeline for completion is approximately 3 months after the start of the construction. So, given the federal government, I would say probably the fall, we'll see the post office
2025.
hopefully open. Which is, at least we're getting updates and we're confident that the post office will reopen. And despite rumors that they're not or they're whatever, so let's try to dispel those rumors.
You can go to Hopkinton, your mail is being sent there. It's not that far out of the way.
Well, isn't your mail getting delivered to your home?
If you have a P.O. box.
You didn't say that.
If you have a P.O. box, you can pick up your mail in Hopkinton from the same number.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to why they wouldn't entertain while they're shut down and looking at different things. Creative minds to maybe sit down and talk with the abutter that's right next to them about the possibility or entertaining purchasing that small home that's between them and the now soon-to-be closed American Legion to add parking for that location. And that would definitely open up a little bit of the downtown area as well for parking. So, something for them to consider if they'd be willing to do that. So if you're listening.
All right, so moving on, our next item under old new business is distribution of updated policies and procedures. So our newest select board member took on that task of putting together a draft. We're not going to discuss that tonight. We're going to reserve a discussion and any modifications at a retreat at some point in the future. Brenda, if you just want to make a comment about your process.
Yep.
I will note that town council does have a copy of this, is going to review it prior to, any discussion that we have.
Okay, sounds good. So the board had asked me late last summer to take a look at the policies and procedures, and it was last approved in 2005, so it's been a while since these have been reviewed, and it was a good process for me to kind of get up to speed on some of the just in general, the policies. So I sat down with Susan and Lisa Ogliaro from HR, and we went through the current policies. Bless you. And there were a few different versions and drafts, so it kind of took a while to pull things together. So there were a few things that I did. One was I wanted to go through and make changes, things like changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board. I wanted to make any changes, like, for instance, our meeting agendas didn't say anything about a consent agenda, so I wanted to make changes for things like that. And then I also wanted to take out anything that was old and updated and include new policies that we needed to kind of think about and include and propose going forward. So you all have a red line document. Yep. There were a few new policies that I put in there for your review. There were a few things that, I added some information on the review of town council, which hadn't been in there before, and some other things too. So I look forward to getting feedback from all of you guys.
Good. Well, we will, so thank you for your work.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to having a good discussion at our next workshop or retreat.
Is that something we want to look at now to see for a date? So that way we can schedule our calendars around that instead of trying to, seeing that it's out, out a bit. Maybe it's something we could do now.
We could. Why don't we do this? Why don't we look at our next meeting, give some thought to dates, and at our next meeting, we'll plug in a date for, Michael will be back, we'll plug in a date so everybody is available.
Yep.
Next item is open the BAA Spring Grant Round. So it's that time again.
It is. Wow.
Mr. Shearer, you and I get
Yes,
to
we're ready to go.
give away money. And then, so we're looking to open up the grant round, the application starting today, and closing them off on March the 27th with an April 15th award date. So that'll give us, Rob, a couple weeks.
Okay, that's our board meeting. Right?
Now, let me, before I just assume that Rob and I are the subcommittee, we can certainly discuss making any modification to that, if that's whatever the board's pleasure might be. But do those dates work for everybody? They make sense?
They make sense, and
Sure.
the two of you do such a good job. I don't think the rest of us feel
Second.
like we should.
Second.
Is there a third? No.
After you just did policy and procedures, I'm not gonna volunteer for anything again.
All right, so Rob, I guess we're a team.
You're
Okay.
up.
All right, thanks.
All right, so to the community at large, the BAA grant round is open. Applications are due no later than March the 27th, and the awarding of the grants will be announced at our April 15th meeting. So
And the applications are on the website? Or how do-
applications are on,
It will be tomorrow.
Okay.
I have it all modified with the dates, but I didn't want to post it before you guys voted it.
right,
Okay.
good.
And if people have questions, Susan Roby's our expert on this.
All right, so that takes care of old new business. We're on to town manager's report, and,
Nothing on priority projects?
boy, just blew right through that one, sorry. We're gonna go to priority projects.
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna say, good, we can use those as board reports.
And so we're on to our priority project update, Rail Transit District.
So we don't have too many updates. Last week, we sent comments to the development agreement to UGC through town council,
Right.
and we're still waiting to hear back. So that's moving forward. At least we're looking, trying to move forward with the development agreement,
Right.
and that process
And we
continues.
assume we'll have something back, or we'll have a discussion at our next meeting.
would
is
think
the
so.
anticipated timeline, so,
Okay.
okay, good.
Are the lines of communication still open, or before they were kind of bogged down, everything is still?
Yeah, no, I think that the
Okay.
lines are, yeah.
All right, good. Thank you.
Okay, update on public safety building.
So the Public Safety Building Committee has been pretty active over I think we reported at the last meeting that we sort of have a condensed timeline. We're trying to, now that we're working towards finalizing the land acquisition, and we're moving through that process. We've gone to planning board. And then last week, our architect, HKT, and our OPM, which is Vertex, presented 3 different options to the committee. And so 2 of the options were 2-story, and then the third option is actually a 3-story building, but given the site and how it's sort of built up, it's not really a 3-story building when you think about it. When you look at it from the street, I think it won't be as imposing as you would imagine a 3-story building. The committee really liked the 3 stories, and so what we did is review that. We looked at sort of how it sits in some of the site constraints that we're working with, and we've asked the committee to continue to review it, the police chief, the fire chief, and other members. The director of facilities, making sure that all of the program is properly sort of put in. It really looks just like a box now. It's a schematic drawing. And to provide our architect some feedback by actually today and probably tomorrow. They'll work on that, trying to find some solutions to the issues that have been raised, and then we'll meet again next week, and we'll continue working through the schematic design which will culminate in the initial, we'll go to an estimator that our architect has, and then we also have an outside estimator to get some better idea of cost, and that will be happening through March.
Good, yeah, Joe, I think you'd agree it was a really good meeting, our last meeting, you know.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
No, it really was. We, I mean, finally getting some sort of design features.
Right.
Was definitely inspiring.
Right.
And it made me, I mean, I was up all night. I couldn't wait to get going. And, you know, I mean, some of the things that I would like to see change, or maybe, you know, collectively make some changes.
Right.
I know that we have to deal with a traffic issue, or the traffic flow with respect to that area, right in that condensed area by East Union Street and Union. But I think my thought was if we were to flip-flop some of the things around and put the bays on the left side of the, right side of the building, on the flatter surface, we could still move that traffic line down a bit. And, because people become acclimated to traffic flow. They may not like it at first, and it's gonna take a while to adapt and adopt, but once they get used to it, it's just like another day on Route 9.
Well, I think everybody had some, you know, concept, and, you know, it's, you know, it's clear that really the chiefs, you know,
Yep.
by virtue of living in the building and using it day after day after day, are gonna have the most amount of input into how it's kind of spaced and configured. But, you know, I think it was just having that actual visuals to start to think about was a big step forward. And, yeah, you know, needs some tweaks, and I'm sure it will be tweaked, you know, based on the parameters and the conditions of the site. But it's just exciting to have that, you know, be at that point, so.
Is there anything worth putting on the website?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, we're gonna work on updating the website a bit more, so we have
Yeah.
more information and some visuals for the community to also see. I should have also mentioned that at the end of the schematic design phase, we will also have a community forum. And so there will be a community presentation, a discussion, and we'll have obviously visuals, but then also hopefully a little bit more information about, you know, the more details of some of the
Right.
building, and then also some of the cost.
Right. So right now, schematic is just merely, you know, blocks
Blocks.
put together. There's no windows, there's no doors. It's just blocks, how they would fit in a space. And then you start the process of really putting it together.
Right. I know both chiefs will be sitting down with their,
They have,
with their
yeah.
men and women, and they have been, right?
They have been,
And, you know, putting, you know, trace paper over the overlay and come up with some changes and stuff.
Right.
Actually, I was talking with some of them outside earlier this evening, and they said that, you know, they were very excited about it. They had some minor changes and tweaks, but, you know, they're the ones that are gonna be inside the building.
That's right.
You know, they'll be living in that building and stuff, so make it easier for them all around.
And I think it's important to notice, and I know you've stressed this a lot at the meetings, Joe, about, you know, that we're designing this to last, you know, 50 years,
Right.
not 20 years.
Right.
Right? So it's very important that we stress that point, because it's, you know, we know how just a home expands, you know, and this is the same. This is
Right.
their home.
Right, and we want everything at, you know, arm's length. So
Right.
that way, you know, the equipment that's needed, it will be at their beck and call, but not having to travel here, there, to pick up a piece here, pick up a piece there.
Right.
Because anybody knows about emergency responses, the more time you take to get that equipment to the scene, you know, the more prevalent that you could lose a
Right.
life or whatever. So if everything is right there in that one location, you're dead on with
But also
this
giving
more
them
stuff.
enough room to be able to do what they need to do in
That's
those
correct.
locations. I mean, if you go to the Cedar Street Station, and when those fire trucks are in there and they're trying to pull on their gear, it's just amazing
Oh.
how little room they have. So
Absolutely.
It's finding that balance.
I mean, even the discussions that we had, if you don't mind,
No, go
for
ahead.
2 seconds, because this will take up my board report, so I won't have to worry about it. One of the things that was discussed was, we'll make it a slab building instead of putting a cellar in. And that's gonna save a ton of money. And it's also gonna save space. We're going to 3 floors. So the cost of the building hopefully will be minimized. They said something about 7,000 square feet of space that we may have saved by doing that.
Good point,
So-
because they also.
So we're trying to, you know, sharpen our pencils at the
Right.
same token, because we know that we're up against, you know, a new school, but at the same token, we're not looking for the Taj Mahal, but we're looking to make sure, like you said, Steve, a 50-year building that will be big enough to support this town, because the town is growing, and you're gonna have those needs. And I think that what our goal was, and our task and our mission statement, I think we're spot on it.
I agree, and I think the other thing, Joe, to point out is, savings in terms of the configuration and the square footage, but also savings, I think, in terms of the intersection, because there was an assumption that that intersection at East Union and
Waverly
135 Waverly would need to be completely reconfigured, which is not going to be the case.
Right.
So there's going to be savings at that
Right.
level. At the same time, you're not, we agree that we can't be pinching pennies to the point where we're sacrificing that, the needs of the departments and the space needed for this 50-year window.
Right.
Question. So if people want to get a little more information, can they attend the public safety meetings
Posted.
and get information so
Absolutely.
that they're not waiting? I mean, because I know sometimes if you wait until you see those schematics, it's a lot harder to change things or revise things, whereas if they can have some input. Okay, so.
Yeah, so the meetings are posted, and
Okay.
we're trying to schedule our next meeting. It will definitely be next week. It will likely be Thursday evening.
The 27th.
Yeah.
The
So they're
27th.
open meetings, they're posted,
Yep.
they're
Okay.
they're downstairs in the BC room.
Yep.
So
Plenty of
if the public wants
space.
to come and give some input, they're
Absolutely,
more than
absolutely,
welcome.
yeah,
Great.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
All right, moving on. Update on downtown project?
So we're continuing to move and trying to get, meet our target deadline to go out to bid by the first week in March, which will line us up to be able to start the project probably in June. I think, Brandy, last meeting you had asked, would we potentially start before school is out? We would, likely, we hopefully will. The times, though, in terms of what will be an appropriate time to be on the road will change. And so we will have a later start time. I want to say it's 8:30, but don't hold me to that. So but it takes into account when the buses will be out of downtown.
Okay.
During the school months, because this will be a really long project, so we won't just contend with buses and school traffic in June. We will also contend with it in September. So the way that we are going to structure the bid is that they will have different times based on whether school is in or out of session.
okay.
And so that's definitely something that's been taken into consideration. Then also sort of notifications if traffic flow will be impacted for any given time period, and that will happen through DPW. And we will be working to make sure that we have really increased communication. One of the things that we have started through Beth Reynolds is a construction mitigation group, and that's really to sort of keep the businesses informed about the possibility of road closures and potential impacts to foot traffic maybe to their businesses. And so we have another one of those scheduled on March 2nd, which is a Monday, from 3 to 4. Invites have gone out, and Beth's coordinating that. So we're trying to keep all the businesses in the loop.
Well, you answered my question on that one, so that's good. So that's excellent. And how many snow days have we had this year? Is it 2?
None?
No, I
Or
think
none?
we've had none, because
think
we had
none.
we had a late,
We had late opening. Okay.
opening.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
so far, no
Right.
snow days.
Right. I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say something about it, and then I'm like, I'm not going to open my mouth, because if it is, there's going to be a blizzard.
Okay,
once all
blame
the
me,
kids
blame
come
me if it happens. No, the reason I say that is because I think the scheduled 180 is June 18th.
It's, yeah.
So-
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Library for the meeting?
Oh, sorry. Yes, at the library.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And that's the second.
That's the second.
Moving on, Warren District and Valentine Estates.
So we're continuing to work through the barn demolition. I'm hoping that we will have a solid date in the next few days to a week. It will likely, at the earliest, be the last weekend in March, and potentially it could move into April. And so we're working out some fine logistics with David Foster. And then we're also hoping to then post and bid out the rebuild. And so that the barn will come down, and then we will be able to reconstruct the barn as soon as possible, and hopefully, I don't think that rebuild will be an extended build, because we're not going to have so many of the systems. We're trying to just replicate build the shell, and then we can build the rest.
Good. All right, you're on a roll.
All right.
Town manager's report. Fiscal year 21 budget updates.
Okay, so Brittany has worked incredibly hard with the direction of Michael, with input of the department heads, to build a little over a $66 million budget. Michael and Brittany presented at the last finance committee meeting and gave a nice overview of the budget. They also heard from police, fire, DPW, and then every year they pick one of the smaller departments to hear from. And this year they did economic development, so Beth Reynolds presented, and then I also presented on the capital budget. And so they're working through their process. I believe they have another meeting scheduled where they'll start talking with the schools. But I did want to give a little bit of an overview of their presentation. And so there's a couple areas, I think, of note. In particular, if you're looking at, I think you have the two-pager, the overview, the general fund overview. If you're looking at it, one of the decreases that we have is in new growth. And so that's really something that we had anticipated, that some of the land acquisitions and some of the moves that we have made would actually impact our overall new growth, because that's obviously driven by new developments and the revenue that is generated from that, which is built into the process. But then also we had for a number of years really large projects like RTD, and so those have now been completed, and we have some smaller projects that are on the horizon, but not obviously to the size and scope of the RTD. And so this is sort of based on an estimation from our assessor's office and working with Brittany, and I think it's a pretty solid estimate of what that is. But that's something that we're going to have to think about as we move forward building our budgets.
So the UGC project is not part of these?
So this is, so it's probably not incorporated in this current estimate because we don't know the size and scope. That being said, he generally takes into consideration that there would be some new growth, because obviously we have areas that we may not know about right now, but projects can, smaller projects can go through in shorter time periods than like the RTD or the UGC project that we've been working on for a number of years.
Now, is Robert Hill Way part of these figures? Because I know they haven't built anything yet. So are we into?
It would be part of it because they pulled permits.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's already, some of these
So
things
it's on
already
the,
included? Okay.
yeah.
I was just wondering if you were anticipating because they haven't pulled them yet, but.
No, yeah, they've, yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's interesting that the Department of Local Services, you can go to on mass.gov, you can go to that section of the website, and they have a number of different data points that you can pull down, and one of which is your new growth numbers. And you can take any community in the state, and when you look at ours over the last 10 years and how it's kind of gone like this, and now it's going this way.
The bills went down,
And,
yeah.
I think it might have been maybe 2-3 years ago, our new growth was like, was over $1 million,
It was over
right?
$1 million, yeah.
Yeah, it was tremendous, but, I think those days are gonna be limited in terms of, those kinds of numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that also impacts local receipts, so there is a reduction in local receipt revenue as well, and that's largely driven by a decrease in building permits. And again, that's probably really driven by, that's not the one-off sort of decks or something. That's, that's the big projects like RTD, where you have several buildings with several permits. And so there is, it decreased just a little over $65,000 from last year, and that's, something that we are going to have to sort of plan for ahead, and it's really based on some of the decisions that we have made. We did see a slight increase for local aid, both in the general local aid as well as Chapter 70. And so that is the most recent numbers from the governor's budget have been incorporated into this. And then if you look over at...
Actually, before you switch pages, why for local receipts, meals tax, is that nothing for 20 and 21?
So this will be, I believe this is because we will have the special revenue account. And so it will be outside of the general fund budget.
Okay.
And it looks like the state aid in general has gone up over $2 million.
So state aid went up, it was like 2.8%, yeah.
Well,
Pretty good
between 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
Now it's only gone up a couple $100,000.
Oh, I see what you're
Yeah.
saying, from our
Yeah, last year we
projected.
saw a large increase in
Yeah.
Chapter 70.
And those numbers are pretty much final for FY '20 in
Oh,
terms of the
2.8,
aid, I
sorry.
suppose they would be.
For 20 or for
Yeah,
21?
the-
Yeah, for 20.
The 20 budget that you're using, so. if I
Yeah.
look at The point, so those are, okay.
For
That's interesting.
commercial revenue, is that under local receipts? Is that, so if, from businesses, is that?
Are you talking about
revenue?
property tax?
From commercial?
So
Because
that
we
would,
should,
What do you mean by commercial?
because we receive
Separate it
revenue
out.
from
They pay
businesses.
property taxes.
Oh, okay, it's considered property taxes.
And it's
Okay.
the same rates.
yeah, we don't have a split rate either.
Okay.
So it just comes in as a property tax.
Gotcha.
And so the only thing separated out as a sort of is the meals, is the local meals tax.
But what would be interesting, though, to kind of look at is, some of these projects that have increased the value of that particular parcel. So you take 21 Main Street, where it was being taxed at a certain value, development comes in, and now it's the value of that and what's taxed on is 5 times a multiple of that original property.
Mhm.
So, how could we calculate those kinds of projects and how that's enhanced our tax base in general? So you have a 21 Main Street that's now, as I say, it's probably taxed at a couple $1 million when it was a couple $100,000 when it was just a house. Not even factoring in the meals tax component that's generated out
That's in there.
of that as well, right? Not even factoring in the fact that there's people that live upstairs that are generating, not that the town receives a benefit from that, but the businesses do.
Right.
There's a benefit to the economic vitality, right? And I would assume the same thing would happen to 128 Main Street as well. So, how do we look at these kinds of redevelopments of properties and how they've enhanced our tax base?
Yeah, so we may be able to look at it like in the way that you suggested. We can also we have to sort of retweak the impact tool that the RTD had
Right.
created. So we have to the data, the back end data has to
Right.
be updated because
So-
it doesn't automatically do that for
Yeah,
us.
I'm
so-
glad you brought that up because I had a conversation with Michael earlier in the week about the impact tool because I would want to see that used with Robert Hill Way, and I want to see it used with the UGC when we have those figures, and both of those. Excuse me.
12 Pond Street.
12 Pond Street would, so any of those, 128 as well. So
Yeah.
what are the potential, impacts to the town moving forward? Now, we know, obviously, with Robert Hill Way and with the UGC, if it pans out, they're age restricted. So, the impacts are going to be more on, let's say, public safety.
and
right?
it would be
So,
schools, yeah.
But it does need to be updated.
Right, and we have to manually
Right.
update some of the data sets,
Yeah.
So per pupil cost and all of that.
And wouldn't some of that have been caught in the new growth? When those buildings were, when they pulled their permits and things like that, some of that would have been
Yeah,
taxed
so
in new
yeah,
growth
it's
to
just
begin
not-
with,
yeah.
and then it just rolls in to the tax base.
Yeah, so I think it is
forward.
incorporated in the aggregate. I
Right.
think if we wanted to sort of do an
Pull specific
analysis, just to give
properties out
to
to-
Well, it's
understand
in
and
the
give an example.
aggregate,
Yeah.
right? But, again, how do you distinguish, when you look at the value card at the assessor's office?
Right.
And you look at how,
How
again,
it's-
I'll use 21 Main Street,
how
how
it's
it's
changed, yeah.
increased.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good point.
So then I think if you go to the second page and you're really looking at the expenses, we have an almost 12, so $11.95 million general government budget, right now a $34.77 million school budget. I will say that there is a delta that has been identified by the schools. I think it's really what they are requesting is $35.5 million, and that really is to address some issues with special education. And so we've been working with the schools, with Jim and Barbara, myself, Michael, and Brittany have been working on a possible solution that we're confident we will likely be able to come to. What may happen is a one-time fix for the delta that's been identified here, and then we'll continue to work with the schools to figure out a long-term solution to make sure that we can sustain this program moving forward. But those conversations are in process, but I did want to at least address that.
So you said it was 35
and a half.
35 and a half?
So it's like yeah.
It's about,
Mm-hmm.
Did you get the email that Jim forwarded?
yes, yes.
And then the other piece that you'll see a large increase would be the non-excluded debt service, and it's about $750,000. And so a part of that is really for pre-authorized projects such as downtown, land acquisitions that we're now seeing. But then also we have carved out on the general government side, in capital, $750,000 for the public safety building. And so we reduced the capital budget by $250, and then we've made some cuts into our municipal side of the budget of $500,000. That being said, we are able to do that without really impacting services. And so we were fortunate enough to receive a SAFER grant, which is a federal grant that the fire department received. And so we're actually going to be adding fire personnel. We're also going to be able to increase the senior tax exemption by $100 per eligible senior. And so that amount will raise to between $750 and $775 for each eligible senior. This is the second time that we've been able to do it, I think since 2006, I believe. And so that's it's a really nice program, and I think it's a really nice benefit, and I'm glad that we're able to do that increase. We've also identified the need to find a funding source to maintain our trails. And so this budget will show it's approximately $65,000, which likely isn't enough to maintain all of our trails, and we'll continue to rely on the volunteer services of our town forest committee that does an amazing job. But also, we're recognizing the fact that the more use that these trails get, the more we're going to have to maintain them. But we also have new amenities like the Riverwalk that may require some upkeep as we, move forward with the Upper Charles Trail. We would assume that there's going to be some upkeep. So again, trying to make sure that our budget is incorporating those services that our town needs and deserves. And then I think that's...
And that our citizens have let us know that they're interested in maintaining and using.
Right.
So.
And I'm thinking that's in terms of...
Excuse me.
I think that's... And so the other thing, I know stormwater has been one of the things that we have talked about several times, and so we will maintain our contribution to stormwater like we did last year. And that way, again, we're not going to the citizens to pick up that portion of it so that we can sort of build in our savings.
In our enterprise funds, how are we looking?
So we've done an analysis. Brittany presented an analysis to Michael and I, and they are looking pretty good. I don't think that she will be recommending a rate change at this point. I think Michael will probably have more information at our next meeting about that, but that first sort of glance, it does not look like something that we're going to have to address water sewer rates.
Okay, and I think also we need to, relative to water and sewer, that's one issue, but, as we expand our conversation about trash and recycling, that's going to be a continuous, I think, ongoing challenge.
Yes, it's definitely something that has been flagged as a possible challenge in the future.
Good. All right, questions for Jen on the budget?
Just a comment, so it would be nice if there were another column added, that we could see the difference from one year to the next on these budgets.
Oh, the percent change?
Yeah, well, or the dollar, probably the dollar amount and the percent, if
Two
possible.
columns.
2 columns, because, looking at the non-excluded debt, that has gone up almost $1 million, and then you let us know where it came from.
Right.
It would be easier to just say, oh, okay, this went up, but, these 2 went down by that same amount.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
You can do that for
So
sure.
these,
I think that would be helpful.
are all these on the, available on the website, under the town?
I will check. I'm not sure if
Under
it's
the
been
town-
posted.
Town budget section?
It should be, and if it's not there, it may be under the finance committee because the presentations were made, but
Yeah,
I will
maybe we should put
double
it
check.
under
Yeah.
town budget,
I
so,
can double
yeah.
check that for
Yeah.
you.
Well, one thing, so Jen, do you expect much difference in the 2020 budget column? I mean, in terms of.
In terms of
what's actually gonna
actuals?
happen between now and June 30th? So, because if we're looking at the 2020 column and saying, treating it as if it's real numbers, how close are these at this point, do you know, to what's gonna happen as of June 30th?
So I think they're probably pretty close. There may be some, I think, there may be some adjustments, but they're probably gonna happen, within, within
So they're
the,
good-
within the
good
general
numbers.
government budget, there may be some adjustments, but that's not gonna necessarily impact the
So
bottom.
generally, they're in pretty close to what you expect to happen.
So
I see.
what might be good at our next meeting, if possible, is an update on the 2020 budget. Where, if these are our numbers for the 2020 budget, where are we compared to our budget? In regards to,
That might be a good
what we've
idea.
used, and if there's changes that are gonna be happening, what those are, as you then finish out the last 3 months of the year.
We used to do it that way. We used to have a percentage of what's been used, what hasn't been used. and what
Right.
was- Yeah.
Right, yeah, we haven't had a budget update
Or
on
just, yeah,
current
right.
for a while,
Or
so.
if you see anything significant happening, we usually end up with free cash, so we know something's probably happening, right? So.
All right, any other comments on the fiscal year 21 budget? I'm sure we're going to have numerous conversations on that, so. And at some point, do we have a date yet for our tri-board meeting? I don't know if I don't think we have yet.
No, I don't think.
So we probably should put that on the list for discussion maybe next meeting.
Okay.
All right, so we're on to board reports. So Joe, I think you said you used all yours up?
I did. I
Yeah.
just want to say thank you. I was very excited about the public safety building meeting, and been rejuvenated.
The algae wall, you doing the algae wall?
Was it doing the algae wall? I don't know about doing the algae wall, but that was a great presentation.
was great,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's nice that HKT has been in contact with them, and they've been in contact with the kids
Nice
themselves.
that they,
So
yeah.
I think that's a great idea, and if we
exciting.
can come up with something that will be beneficial to the town as a whole, and we could be, just like when the high school was built as a full green school at the time, maybe we can take the lead of that, and maybe there's, get some federal funding shot this way as a result of what we're doing.
Or state funding,
Or
or
state
utility
funding, whatever,
funding based on
utilities, right,
grants, yeah.
absolutely, so. But that's it, so,
Good.
thank
Well,
you very
thank
much.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, guys.
Yolanda?
Couple of things coming up that I'd like to let people know about, if you don't already. Coming up on Monday, February 24th, the Milndis School Building Committee is having their next forum, and the next step of the process to get some feedback in regards to the location and the configuration. That's happening at the Mendez School, I believe it's 6:30. You can go to the school website or the Mendez Building Committee website to get that. On February 28th, 29th, and March 1st, The High School Theatrical Society is presenting 13. It's a play about growing up. I have not seen anything about it yet, but they always do a nice job. You can get tickets beforehand or through the students.
There's I'm sorry, there was actually a posting up on.
Is there a posting up?
On the island.
Okay.
Yep.
I haven't been that way for a few
Okay.
days, so. I'll be attending the Metro West Regional Collaborative meeting on Thursday, February 27th at 8 o'clock. We're going to be going to Weston for this one, seeing some of the innovative things they're doing in some of their buildings.
Oh, cool.
And then a little further out for everyone to think about putting on their calendar, on Friday, March 27th, the Metro West Regional Collaborative is sponsoring our annual spring legislative breakfast. We do have confirmation. We picked that date because our state senator Karen Spilka will be there for at least part of it. It will be from 8:30 to 11. Invitations haven't gone out yet, but I expect you will all get one. I believe it's going to be happening at the MWRTA building in Framingham.
Oh, okay, it's not too.
It's the same date as the AEFI.
Yes, the same day
Gala.
as the AEFI Gala, correct.
Are you going, Joe? You going this year?
I'm gonna be here.
You're gonna be here?
I'll be here.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
It was there last year.
I know.
And that is all that I have.
Okay, thank you.
Dance with the machine. No,
Well, let's see. Rob, you're next.
Sure. Well, first thing, March, it's coming up on us, but March 3rd is Super Tuesday, so. And so I'm, is there anything, and we're doing early voting.
doing early
So
voting.
any issues, is that, are
It's
people
next week.
confident that,
Next week?
yeah, it's gonna start?
Did they
The
do training
24th.
today?
They did training on Friday.
They're doing training this Friday?
They did training last Friday.
Sorry,
Yep.
last Friday, okay.
Mhm.
Good. So Tara's confident about the election process and everything? She's got a good plan? Any, good?
Yeah, no, she has a good plan. They've been working on it for a really long time. They've been working really hard on the plan, mostly, worrying about, obviously, staffing.
Yeah.
They're expecting large turnouts,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so they have their staffing plan, they have a contingency plan. I think they're gonna be.
They do a
Great.
great job.
Yeah,
They really
they
do with their plans and working the polls.
Yeah.
So,
And everyone votes at the high school, no matter what.
Still that,
Right.
Yeah.
except early voting.
Early voting is here.
Early voting is at town hall.
Downstairs,
Okay,
right? B and
great.
C.
B and C, yes.
Just a reminder, I think, so March, we scheduled the meeting with the Pine Lake residents about the Upper Charles Trail. So I think it's for March 5th at 7 PM at the community center, so everyone's invited. That's March 5th, 7 PM at the community center. So hopefully it'll be a good turnout for that, and we'll have a good discussion with the
March 5th,
residents.
7 PM?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I did, and what are people, so we got that email about the Alden Street demolition. Do people have anything they want to say about that?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak to that in a little
Okay,
bit.
sure. And the other thing is I called the MMA. I'm interested in the Transportation and Utility Policy Committee. So the committee's full, but they've agreed to let me on as, I guess, an associate member, kind of informally. So I think it's gonna be a good committee because it's a good way of staying involved with transportation issues and what other cities and towns are talking about. And also, public utility is part of it. So this is the committee that MMA has that does these recommendations on this. So I thought it'd be a good way to kind of stay in touch with what's going on and
That's good.
all the things. And I'll report back as hopefully I'll be able to go to some meetings and get some information.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
it's a good
You know they're during the
mechanism.
day, right, in Boston?
Well, actually, they've been meeting in Worcester, which I didn't even know about, like right across the street from me. So,
Well, that's
Perfect.
good.
yes, and I
Well, we look
offered to host the
forward to-
meetings,
But
yes.
it's
so-
gonna be interesting to see how the whole Mass Pike, Alston projects
There's so
evolves.
much going on, it's
Yeah, and
unbelievable.
it,
Can't keep
sounds
track of
like
it.
there could be potentially changes in the project and maybe the timelines or the steps that they take, because the way it's laid out now, everything that I read, it's going to be, pretty much gridlock and chaos for a decade.
Yeah,
Sounds fun.
yeah. There are a lot of concerns there.
Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah.
We'll look forward to hearing some reports.
Good. That's it for me.
And Brandy?
Okay. So just a quick update on where we are with our website refresh. We've had a couple meetings. We're currently working with Civic Plus. They've kind of outlined sort of a broad timeline. We're looking to really kind of have something over the next 2 months to kind of react to, sort of a mock-up. And then once the design is done, we're looking at sort of a July launch target. And really kind of we're, looking at it from a couple different perspectives. One, we want to make sure it's really better organized, less kind of clicks to get where you need to go. We want to make sure that the information's up to date. And then we also talked about really having a calendaring function, which I think is really important. We had seen one in particular, I think it was Natick, that we really liked, that had side-by-side calendars, one for municipal and then one for community. So I think that we kind of gave that feedback to Civic Plus too. So that's kind of a something that we're really looking to make sure we incorporate into the new website. So we'll have something in the next couple of months to kind of react to. But so that's one thing. I saw something in the latest issue of the Beacon from the MMA that I thought was really interesting. The town of Concord won an Innovations Award for using social media for increasing citizen participation. I don't know if you guys had seen the article.
I read it, yeah.
It was a really interesting article. And what kind of struck me was, they're using Facebook Live as a way to broadcast meetings and public forums, specific meetings, not every meeting, but, and they really increased the participation. I think they had said during budget season, they went from like a maximum of 30 emails that they had ever received during budget season to 209 during a live budget session, like questions that had come in, and then 109 afterwards. They were kind of still getting questions afterwards. So it really is I'm thinking of all the forums and things that we are looking to hold over the next 6 months. And I think maybe if we can think about maybe figuring out ways to increase participation by.
So we've actually done that through WACA via Facebook, the forum on the Valentine property.
Oh, okay.
So we were watching the feed and people were sending questions in and we were able to ask them. So definitely something I think as a board we should consider and discuss, because you want to look at how you're getting the information, and
Who's
it
monitoring.
means right, and and it means during a meeting, if you're getting that feedback, someone is monitoring that and potentially asking those questions.
Okay.
So
just something to consider
Yeah.
in the future. And then just one other quick thing, I haven't put anything out on social media yet, but I'm gonna do office hours on Saturday, February 29th at Dolce de Leche at 10 o'clock. So anyone that's wanting to come and chat, come on the 29th. So that's it for me.
Very good. Okay, so first, on February the 11th, the town was the beneficiary, the recipient of an MVP grant through the state, a Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant. And so the workshop was held at the library on February the 11th, and it was it is oriented towards planning for resiliency to climate change. So assuming that we're going to have more extensive storms, more extensive, say, droughts, more extensive power outages and so on, how do we maintain our infrastructure? And so it was an all-day workshop. There was public safety was there, planning board was there, DPW was there, health department was there, Mike Gurnick from the medical reserve was there, and it was a well-done workshop and broke down into various categories what were our susceptible infrastructure, what our concerns were, and then what solutions we could offer. So the next step, so that this was kind of information gathering. The event was put together by an engineering firm that the state hires to go through communities and do these workshops. They'll compile all the information, they'll come back, There'll be a second meeting to review it, and then at that point, it'll go out to the public. There'll be a public forum. Might be a good opportunity to try this
yeah.
Facebook
Yeah.
Live, and just start that process and that planning for those sorts of concerns. And so it was good.
That's great.
So more info.
I had wanted to go, but unfortunately work got in the way.
It's too bad.
I know.
Sorry about that.
No, it is one of those, I know, I can tell you're really sorry.
Second thing is the Historical Commission. We essentially don't have one. We are the de facto Historical Commission. So we have, Susan had given me a couple weeks ago 7 talent bank forms.
Oh, wow.
Some of them were, for the most part, they were listed a multitude of different committees, but every one of the 7 had Historical Commission. So I've reached out to them. I've had 2 replies in the affirmative. I'm waiting for some more feedback. So I'm hopeful that at some point soon we'll be able to assemble an actual Historical Commission dedicated to that task. So
Are those forms available that we can all take a look at who it is? Because we may know them, or
yeah, well, you made copies for me, so Susan, you
are they electronic?
I think I didn't scan them to you.
um,
Let me look. If
Okay.
I didn't, I certainly can. What I
Yeah.
did is I pulled out everything that came in the last year, because
Okay.
it's been a year
Yeah.
since the committee's really been active, so I'm happy to send
Yeah.
those out.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, and we haven't, the commission hasn't met. I mean, Joe, you and I were assigned that
Right.
task, and we still don't have a quorum at this
No,
point. There's
we
only
don't.
3 listed members of the Historic Commission, so we haven't been able to meet at this point.
Right.
So, I'm assuming that the next, as we assemble more people, we would not have a commission meeting, but we would meet with these people to then, start the process of, what does the Historical Commission do?
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously, one of the most important things that they do is relative to demolition permits and demolition delays. So something, if you review the development handbook on the town's, on our website, there's a process for demolition permits and delays. And so regarding the letter that we received today, there's a process and there's a trigger for what happens with demolition.
We got a
And-
letter for demolition?
No, we did not.
No.
We had
The
an email. I'm
Oh, the
sorry.
emails,
We had
okay.
an email relative to a
Okay.
particular property.
Julie's email, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
and, there's a trigger that takes it to the next step relative to demolition, and that trigger is a permit of
That's a
some
demo
sort.
permit, yeah.
Either, but something has to happen first. You
right.
have to get a permit to do something. So it's either a regular planning board permit or it's a special permit. At which point, then that triggers a request for a demolition. Now, the planning board or the process requires for any building that was built prior to 1940 that it gets sent to the planning board, to the Historical Commission, is what happens. So that's why we did get one several weeks
Right,
ago,
right.
right? That went away.
Right.
So at this point, there's no action that anybody needs to take because there's no permit that's been issued or there's nothing that's happened. So hopefully we'll have a commission in place prior to that event so that, it can be adjudicated
And
properly.
there could be
So
one
the-
coming down the road, too.
So the properties are in front of planning, but nothing has been done yet at
Well, I
the
don't think
planning
it's
level.
even been before planning yet. So I
They
think
haven't
it
had,
might
I don't
be-
believe they've had their first meeting, so there's been an application that has been submitted.
Okay, so they have an
And so
application,
it's,
that's what I
I
thought.
believe it's on a planning board agenda, and it's been,
Yeah.
and so they'll start, they're looking for a special permit.
Right.
So
Okay.
they'll go through that process. Obviously, if there wasn't a special permit issued, there would be no need to demo, so it's sort of,
Right.
it's seemingly, it's following the process.
Okay,
So there's a plan, they definitely want to demolish the buildings, or that's part of the plan?
So that's part of the plan that was submitted, so the redevelopment of that property would likely require a demolition, but, before they get a special permit from the planning board, they don't know if their plan that they have set forth would actually be something that's viable.
Yeah.
Right, so if they, let's assume it is, they get, you know, the first green light from planning, then that would trigger
This whole
this
process.
next
Historical
event,
Commission
right?
review.
And, you know, as I'm sure you all know, it's a 9-month delay if that's,
Right, if
if
that
a
gets
delay is
approved.
put on. And it's really incumbent upon the owner to try to find an alternative for that property,
Hmm,
right?
Interesting.
So that's the deal with both the commission and then any,
Great. Well, big thanks, Steve, for following up and taking proactive. I mean, it's important to have a historical commission.
you know,
doing that.
it is important, and, you know, I can't profess to being really well-informed and educated about our inventory of
Right,
historical
yeah.
properties, you know, so, but I think it's important to have a working commission to, you know, deal with the demolition process, but also, you know, to look at the listed properties and maybe be more proactive, right?
Yeah.
Instead of reactive.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
that's the deal with
Good.
historical.
Thanks
And
for
then,
that.
last thing on my list is I just wanted to comment on the passing of Dave Hayworth, who,
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody here knows Dave. Dave, very active in the
I knew Dave.
Scouts.
yeah, in the Boy Scouts, the local Boy Scout troops, and, you know, we've had so many Eagle Scouts come before the board, and, you know, the leadership, he's part of the leadership of those troops, and, you know, we've commented how, you know, that it's, all that success with Eagle Scouts is predicated on having those adult leaders that support all this, and he was one of them, and so, you know, I'd like to, at our next meeting, invite his family here and do a proclamation for him, and I think he's well deserving of that. So,
Yeah.
so that's my report for this evening. So I will at this point entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.